Therefore, the goal is to get the handful of people in the middle to do 20% more. So you're trying to get more out of your sixth man, your seventh man off the bench. That's where you end up moving the needle the most. So it's less about overall achievement throughout the org and more about galvanizing, amping up a specific subsegment.
Is this thing on?
Yesterday's price is not today's price.
Thank you, Fat Joe, and welcome to Run the Numbers, where I interview world-class CFOs, operators, and the investors who fund them on how to get the most out of your company's performance. This podcast is a playbook of sorts for ambitious people in the worlds of finance, strategy, and operations. Today, my guest it's me. You're stuck with me. Necessity is the mother of invention, at least I hear that, and due to some scheduling conflicts, I've decided to take the reins myself. Yes, this will be the first one-on-one podcast with yours truly. Scary, I know. I don't really know what we'll get into. Usually I actually do these intros after, but I figured I would just jump into it. I decided I wanted to cover sales compensation. I'm going to try to do a brain dump over the next hour on everything I know about paying sales reps. So, this could get wacky. This could get wild. It's just me, CJ, your boy, and his dog, Walter. I picture that's the way the world started at first and probably how it'll end. I've been watching a lot of apocalyptic movies and it's always a guy and his dog. But here we go. Sales comp. Let's get into it. Oh yeah, I'm supposed to say all this and much, much more after a short word from our sponsors. Cash is king. As the CFO of a SaaS company, I know firsthand how important it is to maintain a healthy AR balance. If you can't effectively manage cash, you can't service debt, make payroll, or invest in growing your business. That's why I'm so excited to partner with the sponsor of today's episode, Maxio, the leading billing and financial operations platform for B2B SaaS. Maxio helps top SaaS companies like Chili Piper, Crunchbase, and Stack Overflow get cash in the door faster by automating collections and dunning. Gone are the days of manually chasing down invoices. Join the 2,500 plus subscription businesses using Maxio, formerly SaaS Optics and Chargeify, to eliminate revenue leakage and streamline order to cash. It's never been easier to get paid. Visit maxio.com/run the numbers to supercharge your financial operations in 2024. Not only does requesting a demo using the Run the Numbers link help support this podcast, your boy, you also receive a 10% discount on your first year with Maxio. Woo! That's maxio.com/run the numbers. That's maxio.com/run the numbers. Okay, serious question for all my accounting pros here today. Are you doing what you were hired to do? What I mean is, do you have time to actually be a business partner, or are you buried in tedious manual tasks just to get your journal entries prepared every month? I know how that feels. Leapfin's here to help with that. Leapfin is accounting automation software that automatically prepares and posts reliable journal entries. And that's just the beginning. High-growth businesses like Reddit, Canva, and SeatGeek choose Leapfin to eliminate manual tasks, accelerate month-end close, and enable accounting leaders like you to provide faster insights that will help your company grow. If you're battling messy transaction data from Stripe, Adyen, Shopify, Apple Pay, and other PSPs, and then battling again to get it all into NetSuite, go to leapfin.com to watch their short product intro video. And if you like what you see, request a 15-minute conversation to learn how accounting automation can help you and your team. Check out leapfin.com today. That's leap like jump, fin like shark. I just made that up. I hope they're okay with it. Leapfin.com. So what I want to talk about first is designing sales rep comp plans. We'll cover who's involved in comp plan design, getting the split right, so that's the base versus the variable, the quota to the OTE ratio, that's the on-target earnings ratio that you should expect, baselining core achievement, what it should just be. We'll talk about accelerators. We'll talk about paying sales managers. We'll also touch on Salesforce's early comp plans as a case study and what counts as a booking. What counts as a booking has always been a sticky one in different places I've worked, and a lot of back and forth and a lot of name calling. Yeah, name calling and some comp plan flaws. So when you think about comp plan design, there are really three parties that are involved in coming up with what it should look and feel like. And so the first group is people operations. So you want to partner with your head of HR, and what they provide is market comp benchmarking. So that means what's competitive for talent. So they have access to tools like Pave. They have access to tools or reports like What's that super expensive company that does the consulting work? I don't know. Comp benchmarking reports that you probably in finance don't have access to. And so they can just tell you what's competitive for talent. Mercer, it's called Mercer. I came up with it. What's competitive for talent just at a core level. So that'll be your base comp as well as on-target earnings. FP&A then has to set the guardrails. So they have to say, what are we trying to achieve from a top line perspective? And what are we willing to spend to get there? So now you're kind of comparing what the market will pay for talent versus what you're willing to spend. And then you have to bump that up against top line revenue. And then RevOps, I think about them as the ground game. So what will actually motivate and drive the right behavior on the ground when it comes to rep activity. So once again, people ops, they're the benchmarking, FP&A, the guardrails, RevOps, ground game. All of these parties need to have a firm understanding of the org's high-level goals and how the company monetizes its product. I can't stress that enough. They have to actually understand how the company makes money on the product because that is the core of any comp plan. Incentives drive outcomes, and those incentives have to be linked to how you actually sell something. And they need to be consistent, all of these parties, when they communicate objectives to reps so they can manage their time accordingly. So let's talk about the split. The technology account executive, AE, is typically on a 50-50 plan. So that's 50% base, 50% variable. So to give you an example, if their on-target earnings is $200K, 100,000 base that shows up every week, every 2 weeks in the payroll, plus 50% weighted towards their achievement, which can go higher or lower. And that's usually paid out either once a month or once a quarter. And when you get outside of the concentric circles of sales supporting roles, a sales development rep may be 65 base, 35 variable. An account manager may carry a hybrid quota of existing customers plus new customers. If that's the case, they're not just hunters, they're hunters and farmers. Maybe it's 55 or 60% base, so a little less variability. And if you're a people manager of account execs, the boss, you'll still be close to about 50-50, but you're measured against a more forgiving plan. So that's the dirty little secret, but more on that in a second here. The atomic unit of any sales team is the account executive. At most software companies, they're going to be looking at a 50-50 base variable. So like I just said, 100 for 200 on-target earnings. And the reps quota relative to their pay has always been the $1 million question. The quota to OTE ratio will depend on your business model. So let's take an enterprise business model with a heavy install base dependent on land and expand motion. That's going to be very different than a high velocity product-led growth business with a heavy digital component. You have to answer these questions to inform your LTV to CAC, which will inform how much you're willing to pay based on the expectation of future cash flows from a customer. So you see what I'm getting there? I'm trying to figure out how accretive this is to the overall business. Okay. So I'm looking at what the contribution margin based on these sales are. And we're going to talk a little bit about the percentage a rep should make on each deal in a bit. And that's also linked to the LTV to CAC and the gross margin to serve that customer. I will admit though, that now that digital and product-led growth, they're playing a different role in how companies sell. The lines between product and go-to-market are blurring, which sometimes makes it a bit difficult. It's like, is the product actually selling it? Is the rep actually selling it? Or is it kind of product assisted where you're greasing the skids for the rep to close a deal in an easier fashion? And so with all that said, it's like all those disclaimers they put before you make a financial investment. So the standard ratio between on-target earnings and quota is somewhere between 4 and 6 to 1. So a 5-to-1 ratio of 100K base, 100K variable, 200 OTE will call for a $1 million quota. Sometimes you'll also hear it called a 10x base ratio. That's the same math, just not using commission. It's also stupid. Early on, you can rationalize 3x. So that's what you use your VC money for, because you're trying to prime that pump. You're trying to get a plane off the ground without much push, but you can't sustain that forever. It's not going to be a long-term winning bet. So you're knowingly using those venture dollars to get the wheel in motion, but you have to check this ratio against the rest of your operating model. And that includes looking at your sales pod structure. You can't just do it in isolation, because remember, that ratio ends up being like how you bring dollars in the door to also pay all the other supporting sales roles, like the technical sale, the SEs, the BDRs who are driving the pipeline, as well as people like your boy in finance. You have to pay for the whole company. And so should the ratio go up? No. You hire more reps. Okay. So this was something I talked to Brett Queener about, who was the first sales strategy guy at Salesforce. You may have heard them. Small CRM company out in the Bay Area. Early on, a rep's territory is massive. You may have like half the Eastern Seaboard. As a company succeeds, though, you take those accounts away and give it to someone else. Yeah, I know. It's called flooding the block, as my boy Benny the Butcher would say. But you need to give them more products to sell. That's the trade-off. You can't just keep taking stuff from them and expecting them to still bring back just as much with a smaller total addressable market. So maybe one guy originally covered East SMB. In 4 years, 4 dudes or girls may split East SMB, okay? But hypothetically, you should be giving them 4 times more product for them to sell to their respectful handful of accounts, okay? Yeah. Net, the comp model should work regardless of the role at 4-to-1 or 5-to-1, okay? So 4-to-1, 5-to-1, company keeps getting bigger, adding more reps, but adding more products at the same time. Baselining achievement is important. So what percent of reps make quota on a regular basis? Shout out to RepView. They're like one of my favorite data-driven companies out there. They check out what percentage of achievement reps are taking home across all different tech companies out there, along with a ton of other metrics. But it kind of blew my mind when I was talking to Ryan Walsh, their founder, that it's usually actually in the mid 40s. Okay. So 40%, 4 out of 10 reps will hit 100%. But in tougher economic times, it actually falls to the mid 30s. So 2022 to 2024, the percentage was in the 30s. It wasn't in the 40s, it wasn't in the 50s. That is not ideal. And that's why you saw a lot of companies doing layoffs, because they weren't hitting the numbers they needed to hit the fund, the contribution to the rest of the business. So believe it or not, you can still have low 30s and still hit the top line for the business. That's if you have some reps that are absolute murdering it, like they're hitting 200, 300% of quota, making up for the rest, dragging the median up, or if you just completely over allocate quota in like an overly aggressive way. But I've been there before. It degrades culture over time and people start to leave. A good org, I think, in my opinion, will have 60% achieving quota. Some will be like, CJ, you're a bleeding heart. You're giving away too much. But I do want to be winning as a group. I don't want just some people high-fiving down the hall, the finance people. 100% is not what you want. So I've talked to some less experienced finance people who are like, hey, not everyone on the team is hitting the quota. I think I hit it too hard. It's like, no, dude, like you shouldn't be thinking that everybody hits it. It should be realistically aggressive. So I'm going to give you a hypothetical healthy distribution of 10 reps from talking to Ryan, which was in a different podcast that we did. He's the CEO of RepView. So 1 rep totally crushing it, like 200%. 1 rep ahead of plan, like 120%. That's awesome. 4 reps hovering between 85 and 95%. 2 reps hovering between 75 and 85%. 2 below 75, and they could either be ramping still or being actively managed out of the business. It is pretty normal to be always managing at least somebody out within that distribution. Interesting stat, Mark Benioff of Salesforce recently said that 90% of the company's sales dollars come from 50% of the reps. Woo! While this might not be the ideal outcome, because it probably burns through a ton of reps each year, there is a clear power law at play where he's depending on the upper quartiles of reps to basically carry the company, and then, they'll just discard the others. I want to talk about accelerators for a second. First, I need an accelerator from this coffee. We'll probably cut that out, though. Hey, thanks for listening. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. Mercury knows your financial operations are complex. Founders and finance teams have to pull together different tools, reconcile transactions from different sources, and struggle to get accurate answers. With Mercury, you can simplify your operations with banking and software that power your critical financial workflows, all within the one thing every business needs, a bank account. And with new bill pay and accounting capabilities, you can pay bills faster, stay in control of company spend, and speed up reconciliation. Apply in minutes at Mercury.com and join over 200,000, ambitious startups that trust Mercury to provide the precision, control, and focus they need to transform their financial workflows so they can perform at their best. Mercury, the art of simplified finances. Mercury is a financial technology company, not a bank. Banking services provided by Choice Financial Group and Evolve Bank and Trust. Members FDIC. I'm getting good at that voice. Quick math. The less your business spends on operations, on multiple systems, on delivering your product or service, the more margin you have and the more money you keep. That's the goal, isn't it? But with higher expenses on materials, employees, distribution, and borrowing, everything costs more. Yesterday's price is not today's price. So to reduce costs and headaches, smart businesses are graduating to NetSuite by Oracle. NetSuite is the #1 cloud financial system, bringing accounting, financial management, inventory, HR into one platform and one source of truth. With NetSuite, you've reduced IT costs because NetSuite lives in the cloud with no hardware required. Access from anywhere. You cut the cost of maintaining multiple systems because you've got one unified business management suite. You improve efficiency by bringing all your major business processes into one platform, slashing manual tasks and errors. Over 37,000 companies, wow, that's a lot of customers, have already made the move. So do the math. See how you'll profit with NetSuite. And back by popular demand, NetSuite has extended its one-of-a-kind flexible financing program for a few more weeks. Head to netsuite.com/metrics. That is netsuite.com/metrics. Ooh, yeah, you know your boy loves some metrics. That's netsuite.com/metrics. Please do it, guys. I really need this. Dunkin' Donuts should really sponsor this podcast. I run on Dunkin'. Typical accelerators kick in at 100%. These should be linked to your core metrics. You reward someone for getting above and beyond their quota faster. So that's the whole motivation, to not only get above it, but to do it faster, because there's a non-linear result to the business when you can fund it that way. So I get the question a lot. Should it be back-end loaded or consistent? Should you have the accelerators be like, hey, you get there in Q3, Q4, or should it be in all quarters, it's up for grabs? It depends on what the sales cycle looks like and the complexity of the sale. So if your business model is back-end at enterprise deals with, let's call it 180-day sales cycles, you probably want it to be on an annual level. If you have more of an MRR business with shorter sales cycles and you strive to drive linearity, you can look at it quarterly. I think that's probably healthier because people are more focused on week to week and month to month business. They're less worried about making their entire nut on, some big fourth quarter deal. Now, a disclaimer, be careful what you perpetuate. Do you self-perpetuate the seasonality with accelerators? Are you incentivizing both customers and reps to wait until the last moment? And is this how you trained your customers to act? I want you to think about that for a second. Did you train your customers to just hang around the hoop until the fourth quarter? Because they're like, hey, these guys over here, they're gonna pull down their shorts and give me a good deal when the time is right and they need to hit quota at the end of the year. So it could be something that you bring upon yourself. And another point to make, keep an eye on your fully loaded commission rate. So I always do this check at the end of each month and the end of each quarter and at the end of each year, where after you factor in all the other boxes, if you have accelerators, the highest loaded commission percentage, I want to see if it's above or below, in my world, 20%. I've seen it creep up to 25%, when somebody's absolutely slaughtering it and, the team's doing really well and it's in the fourth quarter and you add up all these other factors that compound. Rule of thumb, typically speaking though, if someone does 2 times their annual number, they should be able to make 3 times their OTE. And I actually like stroking that check. I think, it's a lot of money, but it's like an advertisement to the rest of the Salesforce that you will be rewarded. And it's awesome if you hit your number. Paying sales managers. All right, let's talk about the people that manage people. You want your sales managers to be measured on the same goals as your reps. If you measure them on only 2 of the 3 goals, so let's say cash years but not ACV, you can drive perverse incentives. So I can't stress this enough. You want your sales managers to have the same goals that are a summation of their team's goals. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be the same numbers, but it has to be the same categorical fundamental goals. I've seen companies get too cute and try to give sales managers derivative goals from their sales teams. It never jives in real life. And what you can and should do is give people managers some cushion. It'll fall somewhere between the board financial plan and the company's fully deployed operating plan. So for example, if there is a 20% uplift between the 2 plans, the sales manager may get a 10% break to guard against attrition, big deal risk, seasonality. For a sales manager, usually take the sum of the ramp quota of the reps, apply a discount of 10% as a minimum. And the idea is that you're setting your financial plan and your associated expenses to be something less than 80% of assigned quota, and your sales management team's number ends up being somewhere between the finance number and the fully assigned ramp street quota of your team. So you can see that play out in models. You're essentially building cushion into your plan. Case study time. This case study is sponsored by no one yet, but it's a case study about Salesforce. Cash, years, and ACV. Those were the 3 pillars, tenets of Salesforce's early plan. So cash, is it an annual upfront? Are you getting paid quarterly, monthly? Back in the day, they were trying to get as much cash in the door as fast as possible to fund the business so they didn't get further diluted by VCs. Years, is it a 1-year deal, 2-year deal, 3-year deal? ACV, what's the annuity? What's the annual contract value? So in the early days, ACV was equivalent to multi-year, which was equivalent to cash. So that's evolved over time, but different life cycles for different companies. So if you closed a 100K deal, you would have 3 different quota buckets, and you'd be rewarded with as much commission for getting cash up front and for getting a year of multi-year as you would for actually closing the deal. And so that needs to change as you go up market. And you got like a Bank of America, they walk in the door, they got plenty of cash, and they smack it on the table and say, hey, I want to pay for 5 years. That would like completely blow the doors off. So typically companies shift to calling these named accounts or house accounts over time, which need to be treated differently due to the shape and size. And it safeguards the business against those like massive, colossal deals. Sorry, reps. But that's okay because the reps who covered those also get a higher base and OTE target. So there is a trade-off. You guys do get paid more, but like we get to guard ourselves against, like Johnson & Johnson coming in and buying a 12-year deal that would completely bankrupt us. And then you'd get paid so much you wouldn't want to work anymore. Here's a quote from Brett Queener, the first sales ops leader at Salesforce back in the day. And I quote, for comparison's sake, for the early years at Salesforce.com, the compensation plans were ACV equals multi-year equals cash, which means the split of variable was roughly 1/3 each. This approach made sense in the early days of SaaS, where Salesforce was not tapping the huge growth rounds of capital that are available today. We wanted to secure longer customer commitments. Smart man. However, understand what that meant to a rep. We were telling them that getting a year's worth of cash upfront in a second year contractual commitment was as important as winning the deal, which can unfortunately highly motivate the AE to drop price more than needed to ensure they secure the cash and my components. This approach backfired a bit, and why I had to pull a full house account tricks when we moved up market and AEs were closing 5-year, $4 million a year ACV deals with 2 years cash up front. End quote. I always thought it was cool when people said end quote. It sounded so official. He was able to point out like what worked well about it, what maybe didn't work about it, and how it evolved over time. And I think every company needs to admit that like when they set a plan, it's just that it's a plan. It's never going to go exactly how you want it to. And there will be these incentives that you just can't predict because we're all human. And so what counts? I think you need to be very specific around creating this rule and make it crystal clear to reps. So for a signed deal to count within a specific month, the contract or order form must be signed in that month. And the order start date must also be within that month or within X days. So you can also write it in to the comp plans. It has to be within X days. I want everyone to think like really long and hard about making that extremely obvious in the comp plans. I've seen like huge arguments about this. It's like, it started in 45 days though. It's like, dude, well, I can't pay you out now for that. That's like not really a deal to me in finance. It's not really a deal to this business. It's a deal to you that you have someone that signed a piece of paper, but like it's way too far in the future. I've worked at places where the start date was 15 days as well as 30 days. I would suggest you pick like that's the most out it can start from. So I'm just going to say it again. So for a signed deal to count within a specific month, the contract order form must be signed in that month, and the order start date must also be within that month or within 15 to 30 days. The shorter the better, so you don't throw off your revenue recognition or commission payout. That always sucks when you have to pay a huge commission. You're like, well, I really hope they actually start and pay us within 15 to 30 days. And both revenue recognition and commission are triggered when you send an invoice. Signed order equals booking and quota retirement for the period. So invoice sent equals commission payout and revenue recognition. Woo! If a rep gets a booking signed that starts in 6 months, that's great, but it's a pre-booking. In other words, it doesn't turn into a pumpkin or booking until that future month. So don't play games with it. I want to take a second to talk about comp plan flaws. So comp plans usually fail not because they're too aggressive, but because they're too complicated. If you make a comp plan with 5 parts and weightings, you're going to create confusion and you create a lack of clarity around where to spend time and be intentional about it when you are the rep. It's easy to say you want some astronomical growth on a number, but you have to think about it actually landing in a rep's hands. So like what's Jim, the account executive in the mid-market for Iowa, what's he going to think when he receives it? Is he going to think this is like completely out of reality? We want you to not only hit this, but strive to exceed it so you can participate in the upside. That should be like the bumper sticker that you tell them. We want you to not only hit this, but strive to exceed this so you can participate in the upside. And you need to make it as simple as possible and clearly aligned to the company's overall strategy. They should understand the components simply, and they should also simply understand why the company wants them to do that. From like, hey, at the start of the year, we laid out these 3 objectives. It's like, oh yeah, I kind of get it. That totally makes sense. Simplicity and ease of understanding of what is going to move the needle and how do they feel a part of the success and participate in that financially. That's what you want them to walk away with. It's not only, what they intuitively grasp, but it's how they feel. You want them walking out of this completely motivated. What else should we talk about? How about the art and science of SPIFs? So why do SPIFs succeed or fail? When's the best time to run a SPIF? How should you structure SPIFs? And a couple SPIF structures you can copy. So SPIFs are a long-standing point of contention between finance and sales teams. So depending on who you talk to, SPIFs, which are variable cash bonuses tied to a business goal, metric, or contest, are either a tasty motivation leading to short-term business results or a creative way to flush cash down the toilet. I have flushed that toilet on multiple occasions. Yeah, money gone. According to a study by Iconic, I love the stuff they come out with, 71% of sales orgs offer SPIFs to reward strong performance against quota or other objectives, and they make up approximately 10% of total account executive comp. So once again, these are like contests that you're running, and it's like, hey, if you achieve this by that date and speed this stuff up over here, we're going to give you 500 extra bucks. Why do SPIFs scare CFOs? Well, it's increased as a percentage of the comp stack since 2021. It like just keeps rising. It's like the tide in Miami. Eventually it's going to overtake the city. Eventually SPIFs, guys, are going to overtake the comp stack. And it's not always clear if the company is throwing money at something they would have achieved anyway. Like, am I just double paying on something? That's always in the back of my mind. It's less like the amount. It's more, am I double paying on something that I was going to get anyway? I've talked to a lot of RevOps, finance, and sales leaders about SPIFs over the last year on this podcast, which you may have heard. And there are some good takeaways and bad takeaways. And I want to start with why they fail. So people misuse them, full stop. So a SPIF should not even raise to the level of being on finance's radar on a regular basis. Like you should, as a finance team, approve them like once a year or once a quarter, but it's kind of like, hey guys, I'm giving you this kind of bucket of money to do these short-term things with short-term outcomes that you're trying to drive. But like, I don't really want this to be like something that I'm like in the weeds helping you on day to day. It should be kind of like your thing. It should be like me empowering you with this small check size that you can go out and try to motivate the troops. And it should be immediately gratifying. So you shouldn't be waiting till like the end of the quarter to pay the SPIF out. I like SPIFs if they're actually paid out that week. So like that short term, like a call blitz or something where somebody gets the most calls scheduled and you pay them even that day. And this may rub people the wrong way, but I don't think SPIF should be tied to your core metrics. It shouldn't be like, hey, we're going to miss our number. So if somehow we hit it, we'll like pay you more. That's like trying to buy an insurance policy after the flood hits. Something that would make sense. Hey, it's Wednesday. Let's do an opportunity contest at the end of the week. See who creates the most pipeline. Fun, light, not required to keep the lights on, guys. Okay? Where SPIFs go wrong is when people make them hard to separate from the actual number or the goal itself. If you're the type of person that needs a SPIF to get out of bed in the morning, there's something fundamentally wrong. So I was talking to Ethan Schechter, my buddy. I worked with him at Sneak. We went on this crazy hypergrowth journey where it was like just a couple of guys working in WeWork to like this massive office. We 10x, revenue and employees in that time frame. And his observation from all those cycles is that where SPIFs don't work is if you are the finance person at a company that has the wrong sales culture. If you're releasing SPIFs into a sales culture where people actually work 100% harder because the SPIF got pulled out, then you probably need to talk about, like, is the CEO's message hitting here? What are your sales leaders saying about it? And who's running the sales groups? So this is like something that's more philosophical. If you have a team that's like super hyped up over a SPIF to like this level that just like doesn't really make sense because they should be making a ton more with like their base comp plans, then like it could be like something's fundamentally wrong with the culture. I haven't seen that personally, but like I imagine it's out there in some orgs that motivate people the wrong way. What I have seen is where SPIFs succeed. And so experience shows that they are a useful tool when you have a stretch target for the quarter and you need to get more out of the middle of the pack. And that one, like, I didn't realize at first when I got into the startup world. I thought that SPIFs were basically like helping the highest achievers achieve even more. But why am I saying the middle? So you figure that your top reps are your top reps no matter what, right? Like Steph Curry is going to drop 30 points a game no matter what. Book it. They'll show up. At the same time, you can't count on much from your bottom reps because you're either trying to exit them from the business anyway, or they're on their, they're on some sort of hardcore improvement plan. So like you kind of write them off. Therefore, the goal is to get the handful of people in the middle to do 20% more. So you're trying to get more out of your sixth man, your seventh man off the bench. That's where you end up moving the needle the most. So it's less about overall achievement throughout the org and more about galvanizing, amping up a specific subsegment. When are good times to throw a SPIF out there? Let's talk about the months that seem to work best. Tough first months of the quarters. Ooh, we've all been there before. Keeping somebody's head in the game in July when there are hot dogs on the grill. How about when you launch a new product? It's tough sledding to sell something that may not have product market fit yet or requires a rep to learn a brand new playbook. SPIFs do help grease the learning curve. Post M&A, I've seen them work really well for that. So related to what we're talking about, SPIFs can be useful after you purchase a company or a product line. You don't have to just build it yourself. You could like, hey, we acquired this company, this new product may not have the same market awareness as your current offerings. Companies may not even know that you have it yet. So using a SPIF to get the new product you acquired off the ground and also to like get reps to just study what the hell it is. And then tough macroeconomic times. So when COVID came, it was important to keep people's head in the game. SPIFs are an extra carrot to refine focus on certain industries. And that kind of is a good segue into what I wanted to talk about next. Some of you may not know this. I was actually a history major in college. I did a finance undergrad and I also did American history. And so FDR came to mind here. I was talking to Ethan about this, and SPIFs are most useful when you consider them for a long-term company building perspective. So yes, like we always want to impact the quarter we're in, right? We're playing the game that we have in the old ball court right now. Totally made that up. But you also don't want to lose good people because they get discouraged or take their eye off the ball. So SPIFs are a way to keep people engaged as you bridge from one time in the business to another. We've all been through these kind of like quasi weird periods where like, the company is evolving. There are more sales reps being added and maybe you overhired for something or you have new products coming or there's competition in the market. And so Ethan was giving me this analogy that like FDR with the New Deal. So economists today will tell you that like none of those programs actually made the economy better. The economy just needed to unwind itself because it was so upside down. It just needed time. That has a lot to do with what you see at businesses in different development life cycles. They just need time. What FDR's programs did though, it kept people's heads in the game. It kept them getting out of bed each day. So in those tough times when the targets were not scoped the right way, maybe the economy is totally in the gutter and you want to grow again next year, it's going to be expensive to go out and hire new people again. That takes time. They have to ramp. You have to find them. You have to teach them about the product. So even if you're in a situation and even if it's a loss leader, it'll impact your customer acquisition costs. Sometimes you need to motivate people to build dams and bridges and roadways because you'll get to the end of this and you don't want to lose talented people. I think this is a super creative way and long-term thinking way to use SPIFs. So said again, SPIFs help you transition from one time to another. So sometimes throwing small dollars at a group of people will pay big dollars in terms of having an educated, ramped, happy, stable reps when times turn good again. You're buying time. So short-term dollars might make long-term sense. That's sense, S-E-N-S-E, not C-E-N-T-S. Terrible dad joke. Some SPIF structures that you can copy. Steal this. Double bubble. So that's when you retire 2 times of quota on deals for a specific period of time. Maybe it's just in that week. That's definitely on the more expensive side of the ones that I've seen. What I like better, like big deal prizes. So giving the rep with the largest deal in a quarter, a watch, a TV, a golf clubs. By the way, TVs are like so cheap these days. I was looking into them. I remember like growing up, there was a kid down the street who had like you remember those really big, boxy, big screen TVs and like the kid would have like in their basement from school? They were like $20,000 and it was basically just like a projector with a massive screen. But giving the rep something like that, maybe an iPad. At PwC, they used to give away iPads. This wasn't SPIFs because we were consultants, but we used to joke that there's someone like just in a room in Minneapolis with 30 iPads because none of us ever won one, but apparently they were giving them away. Salespeople love watches. They love physical tokens of achievement. Someone recently told me they had the biggest deal one quarter and got a Porsche convertible lease paid for the summer. That is baller. Imagine being like a 25-year-old guy just cruising around Cape Cod in a Porsche. Everybody thinks that it's yours for the summer. That's pretty cool. And it would probably be like under 10 grand to rent it for the whole summer. Fast start. So you get 1.5x quarter retirement on deals closed in the first week of the month, 1.25 for deals closed in the second week of the month, 1.1 for deals closed in the third week of the month. You see how it kind of descends. Pipeline sprint. Great to pull out of the toolkit when your pipeline coverage ratio falls below 3x. That's kind of the standard rule of thumb. It varies by segment. Maybe SMB, it's a little bit less. And reps are shouldering the load of sourcing their own deals. Upfront payments. In times when you're trying to preserve cash, we've all been there. You can give a little extra juice to reps for prepaid contracts that get dollars in the door today for services you'll provide to the customer tomorrow. So let's recap some strategy stuff here. So focus on the incremental. One of the most common places to use a SPIF, right or wrong, is upon a new product launch. But what a lot of people fail to gauge is if it was necessary in the first place. So if the product is good, like, do we believe in this product? Is like, the people want it if people ask for it? And is there market demand? It might just sell fine without it. So that's why you should always focus on the incrementality of what you're doing. Would you have gotten this result without the SPIF? I think SPIFs can work when you're tying it to incremental behavior that you wouldn't get anyway. And that's where the balance kicks in. It's like, let's do a SPIF to focus on X product or Y product because it's a new launch. It's like, dude, it's a new launch. Do you know how much marketing power we're putting behind this? And also, like, if you're launching a new product, people were probably asking for this and it's been in development for a while. Sid Kumar, SVP of RevOps at HubSpot, I remembered, had reminded me that. Always go back to the incrementality of it. Is there market pull? Another one here, KISS, keep it super simple. Comp plans should be simple. We talked about that towards the beginning of the pod here. SPIFs can get off the rails in a number of ways. And the first is making it so confusing that the rep is trying to add up on a piece of paper. It's like a Sudoku chart or like one of those like Super Bowl squares where they're trying to check the boxes. The fewer, more intentional actions you can direct a rep to, it will make a lot more sense. That was a quote from Sid Kumar. The rep has to clearly understand how to balance the SPIF objectives with their core comp and broader objectives. I've seen SPIFs not work because they're actually more complicated to understand than the core comp plans, but they're for like way less money. So now you've created actually a distraction, which is like the last thing you want to do. You don't want to distract people. You're trying to get people to sell more. Couple of fun payout ideas. I always picture like Happy Gilmore with the huge, massive check for like $500. Big golf checks, gift cards. Big golf. I always wondered if you could bring that check into a bank and if they'd like, what do they do with it? Do they cash it then and then just like put it behind the counter and it's like, they're all, I don't know. A car lease, like we said, watches, Plinko board where you win the SPIF and you drop the chip in and things at the bottom are different prizes. Gym memberships, sports tickets, parking spot in the front of the building as if people still go in to work. All right. Last segment we're going to do here on paying sales reps. I want to benchmark how much you should be paying your account executive. So what commission rate should an AE make on a deal? And also, what should the total commission stack look like after you factor in everybody else? And what can push these rates higher? This has been a long-standing debate. So a company can pay a rep more per deal depending on how long the customer is estimated to stick around and what it costs to maintain the account over time. So I'll say that one more time. So you should always think about how long will the customer remain a customer? Like, what's the churn rate? And then what's the cost to maintain the customer? So that's your cost of goods sold, and it plays out in your gross margin. So you can't talk commissions without talking about LTV and COGS. SaaS customers, they're going to provide an annuity stream to the company when they don't churn. That's what's so powerful about SaaS and why you can afford to pay these commission rates, because you're banking on them sticking around ideally more than a year. And so maintaining that annuity is varying in contribution depending on COGS. The stack is going to be a lot less for a 50% margin business with high churn than a 90% margin business with low churn. I'll give a couple of examples here. So like A high gross margin, maybe 80%, a mid gross margin, maybe 70%, a low gross margin, maybe 60%. Average customer lifetime, let's say it's either 1, 3, or 5 years. You could maybe afford to pay a single AE 14%. So 100K deal, they make 14K. If you have a 80% gross margin business, high gross margin, and they're going to be around for more than 5 years because they're bringing in an annuity stream to the company. But if you have on the low end a business that's a 60% gross margin business, yikes, and the average customer lifetime value is a year or less, you should not be paying them more than 6% on the deal. Let's take something in the middle. And people always say this number, just like as a rule of thumb, and there is some credence to it. Let's say it's a 3-year customer lifetime, pretty good, decent, and the gross margin is 70%. 10% to the AE, just a quick rule of thumb. I've talked to a bunch of CFOs and VPs of sales ops, and the highest average AE payout reported from talking to them was 14%, lowest was 6%. And if I take a step back, other than customer lifetime and cost of goods sold, a third factor I would throw into this bag of burritos is to consider how much support you're giving to the rep to do their job. So from a go-to-market perspective, are they sourcing their deals themselves? Are they getting fed warm leads? Do they have their own system engineer in BDR? I'm going back to the ratio piece here. So what are you giving this rep to go out and win deals with? Is it, we used to joke that we had this sales rep in Israel. It was him and a trick duck closing like 400K deals. He was a gangster. And that leads us to the second piece of this analysis, the total stack. What does the total commission stack look like after you factor in everyone else? So positions that you should consider: account exec, obviously, that's the atomic unit; system engineer, BDR, SDR, management, so that's the people managing the people; in alliance or channel. A lot of people forget to put this in. And then what's the go-to-market level? So is it light support, medium support, heavy support? The account exec, that number should go down the more resources they have. So if they have heavy system engineer support, so they have their own SE, heavy BDR support, they have their own minion passing them leads and qualifying deals, and then they have like a bunch of management coaching them, and they also have, the alliance or channel pushing them deals, putting it on their paper. Maybe they only get 8%, but the total commission stack is going to be higher. The whole commission stack may be 24% when you add it all up because of those resources. But let's take it and say that basically it's that scenario where it's the one guy in Israel and a trick duck trying to close deals. Maybe you pay them 13% because hey, I know we're not giving you a ton here. You're sharing a system engineer with 8 other people, and BDRs don't exist, and there is no alliance feeding you deals. Maybe the total stack is 18%, but you get 13%, the vast majority of it. As much as I like to rely on the 4 to 5x quota to OTE ratio, that's a rule of thumb which we talked about at length to start this. If we're giving a rep 5 times more marketing and sales coverage, their quota should be higher than the one without assistance. And that all links back to customer acquisition costs at the company-wide level. I've also worked at places where it was 100% channel driven. That means every deal had to be provisioned through both a distie and a reseller. That's cool because it lowers your CAC, but at the same time, now you're feeding people from outside the company too. And that factors in to how easy it is to close a deal. Not all software companies have a channel component, but most do have some ecosystem layer. So I got a reaction from some people when I brought this up in mostlymetrics.com. And they said dude, I don't have a channel distie reseller. I'm like, yeah, but do you have anybody who sells on your behalf, like a marketplace? Oh yeah, we do AWS or Snowflake marketplace. I'm like, yeah, that's the same thing. Those layers are not free, and they need to be contemplated in your total cost to add up. From the CFOs and VPs of sales that I surveyed, the system engineers and BDRs were straight down the fairway. Almost everybody said that a BDR is somewhere between 0.5% and 2%. Most are our BDR or SDR just gets 1% of the deal when you do it out. And our system engineer usually gets about 3%. What did have the most variability was actually the management layer. So the lowest I heard was 2% and the highest I heard was 5%. And I think the right answer will depend on your sales org span of control. Stuff that can push the stack higher. Accelerators, the full year will most likely be higher in aggregate when you factor in stuff that adds to the deal. So I said, 18%, 20%, 24% total commission stack. That's an average deal. It may be 5% higher at the end of the year. If people do get in accelerators and the company's doing really well, economy is doing well, it can go up by about 5%. So 18% becomes 23%, 20 becomes 25, 24 can get close to 30. Ooh, wow. From multi-year, the same thinking applies for multi-year uplifts. So factor in 2% to 3% more. I was talking mostly about 1-year deals, so that can push it higher. Clawback provisions. Ooh, dirty word, clawback. Those are safeguards that help the company get comfortable paying out more in big deals and making rep rewards immediately gratifying. So like reps are coming to me saying, can we just get paid faster? I'm like, fine, I'll pay you faster. But like, if this deal doesn't come in, I got to take that money back. If CFOs know their protections against churn and non-payment, they may be willing to pay faster. So it cuts both ways, sales guys. I don't want to do clawbacks, but if you want the money faster to go and buy that Cape House, okay. Overlays, more management can make that stack a bit higher, but ideally it's the same aggregate percentage, just split over more people. CFOs I talk to, like, we just think of management as like all, like the managers, directors, VPs, CROs, like it doesn't even matter if it's just one. It's just everyone who's helping and coaching the reps. So they're all the same in theory. They're just overlays supposed to make the AE more productive. So that's sales rep compensation. Thanks for kicking it with me and Walter. We appreciate this, trial run of just me on my own, on the mic, with my thoughts. If you liked it, let me know, because I'll do more of these. I'll just set up the mic, let it rip, and we'll be back soon with more CFOs. Thanks for the support. I love you all. Goodbye.
Run the Numbers is a mostly LLC production. Yelling an intro by Fat Joe. Artwork by some AI thingamajig. Podcast and video editing is done by Cleancast at cleancast.io. Nothing said on this podcast is intended to be business or investment advice. It's the sole opinion of me, a guy who feeds his dog too much ice cream and has a history of net operating losses, LOL. If you like this podcast, please hit subscribe. It would mean a lot to me. And also check out mostlymetrics.com. That's my newsletter where I explore business models and financial metrics. Thanks for riding with me. Share this with your friends. Peace.